is Gator basketball. Kevin Winter with you alongside Macy Meis, Sports Lab presented by Rally House. We're going to switch gears, talk Gator football. Of course, Sean's the voice of the Gators. We bring in now David Waters from Gators Breakdown, the host of the Gators Breakdown podcast. Get it all over wherever you get your wherever you find your podcast, at Gator Dave _GB on Twitter. And yes, David, it still is Twitter, my man. How you doing, brother?
Yes, I still say Twitter more than I do X as well. So
attaboy.
It is still. Yeah.
That's why we get along, my friend. That's why we get along. In this transfer portal window, what has impressed you the most about what the Gators and head football coach John Summerall and his staff have done?
I don't know how you will separate it. I think the biggest thing's probably still the retention of the five main guys that have produced and have potential that you really wanted to keep. Jadan Baugh, of course, was number one at running back. Gives you something to, a foundation for Buster Faulkner to come in here as the offensive coordinator and build this offense around. Vernell Brown III, Dallas Wilson, some receivers that played a bit last year, more so Vernell Brown III and Dallas Wilson. Of course, the potential, and we saw it all in that Texas game last year. Hopefully, he can replicate that a few more games a year.
Mm-hmm.
Then on defense, the potential of Jaden Woods and him coming up as that edge rusher that Florida desperately needs, and then of course Miles Graham. Even though it is a legacy, still a big important, I think, leadership piece on that defense. But I think as far as the portal goes, I think it's the skill players. Eric Singleton Jr. from Georgia Tech, and then that running back Evan Pryor, London Montgomery gives some depth behind Jadan Baugh. But Eric Singleton coming in, and I think putting him with Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown III gives Florida a lot of versatile options at receiver. You can move Singleton and Vernell Brown III through the slot, to the outside, and I think it really gives a creative offensive coordinator like Buster Faulkner a lot to work with.
Thank you, David, for joining us. This is Macy Meis. Question for you. Did you have concern about some of the retention with these guys? Because I know that played a big role in other guys potentially transferring here, things like that. When the portal first opened up, what were you thinking?
Yeah, a little bit, because you knew Florida was going to go head-to-head with Texas for a few of those guys. And there were reports, from Texas media that Jadan Baugh and Dallas Wilson were going to enter the portal and Texas was going to be the next destination.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out that way. And so Florida went head-to-head with the, quote-unquote big boy that's going to spend a whole lot of money. And Florida went head-to-head and won that battle. And then Jaden Woods even took a visit there, and Florida still comes out on top of that. So that was my biggest concern when this thing was opening up, and the retention part of it. You knew Florida was going to have to go head-to-head with Texas for a few of those guys and then come out on top.
David Waters, Gators Breakdown, joining us, Sports Lab presented by Rally House. Kevin Winter with you, Macy Meis. On that end, David, what does it now say about the Gators and whether it's their NIL budget or the Florida Victorious Collective about what Gator fans should expect year after year, that we went out this year, kept the players, paid the players we wanted on top of getting others? What does that now, what kind of precedent does that now set for Gator fans and expectations?
Yeah, I think it sets a precedent, at least for the start of this, that it should build a roster that's competitive. Now, I'm not saying Florida's going to have money like Texas Tech and Texas A&M and those Texas schools, and maybe even Miami to a point with what we've seen, and now even with reports of Darian Mensah maybe hitting the transfer portal, and Miami paying upwards to $6 or $7 million, $8 million for another quarterback. Yeah. It's outrageous out there. So in some avenues of this, I'm not saying Florida's going to be up there at the top of the NIL, but Florida's going to be top 10, top 15-ish, at least enough to build a competitive roster, and then let coaching kind of take over after that. I think that's what that sends. And look, when this coaching search was happening, when it was going to be possibly Lane Kiffin, if not Lane Kiffin, who would it be? A lot of that, I think, was built on a lot of that conversation back and forth was, if you get somebody like Lane Kiffin, maybe there's going to be a little more buy-in because he's proven there's a lot of excitement around him. That's a lot who Gator Nation wants. There might be some support that hasn't been there as far as monetary value, NIL, roster construction goes that he may be able to bring. Okay, well, you didn't get him. So I still think it might be a wait-and-see approach for some out there to kind of jump on board before they pay with their wallet, kind of now needing a proof of performance with John Summerall. But I do think these early steps go a long way in getting some people on board that maybe weren't on board 2 months ago when Summerall was hired, that now feel a little bit better about the direction this thing goes. And I think that with who Florida was able to attain and keeping that recruiting class together as well, let's not forget that,
Agreed.
does send the message that there is enough for Florida to compete. And now maybe wins will get it over to that next level.
Agree wholeheartedly. David Waters, Gators Breakdown. Kevin Winter with you, Macy Meis, Sports Lab presented by Rally House. There are three steps to this. There's A, Summerall had to win the press conference. Did it. Check the box. Summerall had to make a splash, whether it's retain and bring players in. A, check the box. Now the guys have to perform. And and I'm with you 100%. Now it is up to, you've done everything you can off the field. Now the on-field, spring practice, the spring game, fall camp, and then boom, away we go coming up in September. David, when it comes to the new players, I think Singleton is the shine. He's the star. What are the Gators getting in Eric Singleton?
Somebody with at least proven production and at 2 spots. Now, it was Auburn last year, and now he gets reunited with Marcus Davis, his wide receiver coach at Auburn last year, and then even more familiarity with Buster Faulkner. His 2 best years were at Georgia Tech, and it's somebody who can win off the line of scrimmage. It's somebody who can take a catch, closer to the line of scrimmage, win that one-on-one battle to get the ball in his hands. Now, maybe at some point you'd like to see him a little more maybe after the catch, but running routes, beating his man one-on-one is definitely what you're getting here. And like I said, I think pairing him with an outside threat like Dallas Wilson in this Buster Faulkner offense. Yeah, he had Cam Coleman beside him last year and in the same wide receiver room with him last year, but we know how bad that passing offense was at Auburn last year.
Yep.
You hope that at Florida with Aaron Philo in a quarterback competition, maybe with Tramel Jones, with Dallas Wilson, with Vernell Brown III, that there's enough there where defenses can't scheme to just take him away with Eric Singleton. So I think pairing with Buster Faulkner, a quarterback battle that should at least produce, I think, a safety. A pretty good safety net at quarterback for Florida, and then all the other options, with Jadan Baugh and the receivers, like I mentioned around him. I do think that opens up ability for Singleton to get a lot of one-on-one coverage and win the battles like he's been known to do.
Awesome. And, thinking about Singleton and then all these other wide receivers in the mix, what do you think the quarterback situation is going to be next season? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is interesting. Credit to Tramel Jones, and I think also the staff for getting him to stay. And I do think they sold him. Hey, this really is going to be a competition when spring practice rolls around. And I think it will be, but I think Aaron Philo, let's put it for what it's worth, probably handpicked by Buster Faulkner to coming over from Georgia Tech, where he was probably pretty close to guarantee the starting job there at Georgia Tech, and now coming to Florida with Buster Faulkner. There's 2 years of familiarity with that. Even if they're pretty much even in the skill department, I think that 2 year with Buster Faulkner is going to be the separator when it's all said and done. I think it will be a good battle, but I think Philo and that experience with Buster Faulkner is going to win out there. So for him, I think ball placement is what he's kind of been known for. Thrown for a ton of yards, set the state of Georgia high school record for passing. And I don't know if he's got the biggest arm in the world, but you don't necessarily need that at this level. And I just love the creativity, misdirection style Buster Faulkner can come up with as an offensive coordinator, and with these receivers as weapons. I think Philo and or Tramel Jones, if it works out that way, I do think this offense will have something to kind of rely on, but also pair that with Jadan Baugh, and that's a pretty good pairing.
By the way, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. David Waters, the news this afternoon came out about a half hour ago. Jalen Lloyd, wide receiver out of Oklahoma State, he is now the newest member of the Florida Gators. All right, very quickly, we've talked a lot about offense, David Waters. On the defensive side, I want to focus on the defensive line for a moment. Have we gotten bigger? I feel like every kid we're bringing into this defensive line is a behemoth who can move.
Yeah, the biggest one lately, and I don't know if I'm saying this guy's name correctly or not, but it's the Baylor transfer, Samu.
Yeah, hang on, just call him Samu. Samu, the kid who came over yesterday. Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
Until he says his name, we're just going to go Samu.
All right, you saved me on that one. So I'm good there. Yeah, it brings a lot of size, not a lot of productivity that's so far, but with Mekhi Burrow leaving and hitting the portal, Florida definitely needed to go hit the interior of the defensive line. So you bring Samu in, DK Kalu also from Baylor. I'm a big fan of Emmanuel Obadejo coming from Jack State.
Agreed.
Probably can probably slide him out to edge a bit more. But the interior with Burrow leaving, I think Jamari Lyons, for him to continue, that was really a bad injury he suffered 2 seasons ago in fall camp. Came back last year. I still think might be trying to find his legs underneath him a little bit. So Jamari Lyons, somebody I've been high on, I think is going to kind of anchor the middle there. But Florida has attacked the defensive line through the transfer portal, and more so depth, because I do think Lyons will anchor the middle. But losing Burrow, I do think did kind of hurt Florida. I don't know if they've really replicated what they've lost in what they've replaced him with, but certainly needed some depth, and I think they've at least tacked numbers-wise the defensive line.
Again, like you said it right there, it's numbers-wise. We've gone numbers. We've replaced the numbers that we've lost. Now it's the ability to see it on the field, and the unfortunate part is we got to wait. And by the way, I have zero patience.
So do I.
David Watt.
With a coaching change, patience is twofold. You have patience for the coach, but you're so ready to see something new.
You really are, especially what the Gator fans and the Gators have been seeing over the last couple of years. David Waters, Gators Breakdown, GatorsBreakdown.com. Get the Florida Gators podcast. At Gator Dave _GB is where you can find him on Twitter. Great stuff, bud. I'll talk to you soon, all right? You be well.
All right, guys. Thank y'all so much.
All right, David Waters joining us. Macy Meis. Nope. Hey, Kevin, broadcast professional. You hang up on Dave. That's the button. Don't turn your microphone off, Kev. Leave that one on. So there's your comment. See, by the way, this is what you do. When you screw up, just have fun.
Always.
Just have fun. It's live radio. Things are going to happen. Just don't swear.
Preferably. Good call. Preferably on that. Let's have more of this conversation about the transfer portal coming up. I want your thoughts on our YouTube account at WRUF, home of the Gators. Get your comments in there if you have any questions or any comments about what Dave said. Do you agree with anything when it comes to the transfer portal? Macy and I are going to talk a little bit about how this has all worked out when it comes to the NFL going, with the NIL and how that's going. And I say this because the young lady who is an old soul next to me hates the NIL. I do.
You think it's ruined college football.
I really do.
Then you're going to tell us why. Coming up next. Macy says NIL's ruined college football. That's how you're going to make your introduction, huh, kid?
Sounds good. I'm ready.
Challenge accepted. 392-8255. 392-8255. That's still to come here for another half hour in the Sports Lab presented by Rally House on WRUF.